How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. Finally, we are seeing the relief of manager David Bell for the Cincinnati Reds. And I got to say, I'm kind of surprised for a couple reasons. First of all, the reviews, the mixed reviews that people are really upset with this. We're going to talk more about that because that one was a little interesting, but more so they did on the week before the season ended. I've seen a lot of people talk about how you try to bury it before a Bengals game. You do it on Sunday Night Football. I'm gonna be honest, I think that's being a little too particular. I think we're overthinking it a little bit. If the Reds would have went out there and signed, if they would have went out there and signed Shane Bieber, nobody would have questioned it and said, "Sweet, I'm glad you did it. I don't care it's 10 o'clock." Just like the Bengals, they go out and sign guys at 10 o'clock at night. Nobody questions it. I think we're over analyzing that a little bit, but there is something to be said about waiting until a week before the season ends. That was interesting. Kind of don't know how to feel about that one because you're gonna fire a guy, you can wait to the end of the season. He was here for 6 seasons. There you go. We'll give you the rest of the season, or you fire him a month before the season ends because then it's like, all right, well, at least we can give our other manager a chance to try to figure things out, or our interim manager try to see what he can do, see what he's capable of. You don't have a week's not enough time. A week feels an interesting dilemma. Maybe it's the Reds saying, hey, maybe we want to start searching a week ahead of time for our next guy, kind of get ahead of things from that perspective before other teams can. Maybe they have a guy lined up already and we don't know. That could be the situation, but I thought that was an interesting one. But besides that, if we look back and say, hey, a lot of people upset with the organization saying, oh, it's not David Bell's fault, it's the organization's fault. I'd like to talk a little bit about that one. Because I will say, first of all, we'll credit David Bell. Really enjoyed a couple seasons that he was as a Reds manager. One of the most exciting, most resilient bunches we've seen was those years where Castellanos or Winker, these guys were the cardiac cats of baseball. Really resilient in those regards. Couple seasons like that where it felt like this team was never out of baseball games because of the way the offense played. You always had confidence. You was always excited to turn that game on, even in the 6th inning, the 7th inning, down 3, down 4. Somehow the Reds found ways to win those games. Loved watching those games. Meanwhile, I think a lot of people are saying, and what we're disagreeing here, is that David Bell never got a chance. It's the organization's fault. The organization needs to do one thing. That is their fault. And they got to figure out that training staff. They have got to clean house. For this many young guys to be getting hurt all the time, there's a problem there. There's a place that's had an opportunity. It's the training staff. Gone. See ya. No questions asked. Because of the injuries. But let's go back to 2019 when David Bell first came here. Remember, he came over for Brian Price. Brian Price did not have any success as the Reds manager. The Reds got a lot of high draft picks. The Reds had a lot of chances to rebuild and retool under Brian Price. You did that. You get these young guys coming up. Reds fans especially were kind of excited. Say, hey, let's bring in a new face. You got the Winkers. You got the Senzels coming up. Guys of that nature. Suarez just coming up here, what was it, 2019, 2020, hit those 50 bombs. Suarez, you felt good. Joey Votto still had some in the tank. He said, all right, we'll bring in a new manager. Maybe we can get the ball rolling. You know what else they do? Now, it didn't turn out the best, but they make a move to acquire Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp, Alex Wood. Alex Wood would go on to still be a solid pitcher. Injuries kind of riddled him for the Reds. Yasiel Puig at the time, you thought, oh, good addition. Still a solid hitter. Matt Kemp, if he's healthy, obviously the health concern was there at the trade, a solid player. At the end of the day, right off the bat, this organization was trying to, whether it was good or bad moves, right? They was trying to make moves for veteran players, proven players, to help David Bell win. And for some reason, we're looking back now and saying, hey, that was never the case. David Bell was just never given a fair chance. But meanwhile, here we are in 2023, 2024. Yeah, there's been injuries, but it feels like he's got the most loaded young roster the Reds have had in a long time, if he could get the most out of them. And they do add, again, devil's advocate, Yadier Candelario, once again, spending money in the offseason. But let's go back to 2019. Remember Jesse Winker, young Jesse Winker. Very, very promising start. We wanted to see this guy play. You remember how many years? It was a couple years they said, no, he's not ready. No, he's not ready. They don't want to rush him up here. Finally, he comes up. He looks like a solid baseball player if he can stay consistent. And what does a young David Bell do? Something that reminds us of who he was as a manager for 6 seasons. Jesse Winker 24, 25 years old, wasn't the best against left-handed pitchers. Did he really prove that in baseball over, 3, 4, 500 at bats? No. Proved it in the minors. He proved it in a small sample size in the majors. But if you have a young guy who you feel like is your next cornerstone of your offense and you're not willing to develop him, you're not willing to play him against the lefty so he can learn and improve. Of course, he might not be good at it now. You have to really be able to develop these guys. You have to be able to give them the chances to bat in those situations. And in that time of the day with the Reds, there wasn't a contender still in 2019. Why was Jesse Winker not playing every day? Why was David Bell always playing this game when he was your hottest hitter on your team? When he wasn't your hottest hitter, maybe you give him a chance, but that was the MO. That was the MO of David Bell throughout his tenure, where he never gave guys a proper chance to develop against certain pitchers because he was so worried about the analytics. And it might work for some teams that have more depth. It might work for the Dodgers all the time. It might work for teams with more depth just because they're not hurt or whatever. But David Bell is always trying to be cute with things, not giving these guys chances to develop. That goes back on him. And that is where I start to question things. Because then now let's talk about, again, for a guy that was not given a chance by the organization, let's talk about the year where the Reds still had, I don't want to say young Joey Votto, a Hall of Fame runner team. He still had those flashes of greatness in him. They had Joey Votto. They had a young top draft pick in Nick Senzel. Another one in Jesse Winker, right? Real young players, still all the potential in the world. As Red fans at that moment, we thought, boy, those guys are going to be players for this football or baseball team. You had those pieces. Suarez was, again, big seasons, power seasons still. We didn't see the fall off of Suarez yet around this time. And then you say, we're going to add another guy, big contracts, most money the Reds have spent in free agency over an offseason. Nick Castellanos, Mike Moustakas. Now, Mike Moustakas, again, mind you, is still a 240, 250 hitter, 30 home run guy when he was coming in on that signing. It was a big signing at the time, the Reds making a move. Sonny Gray, Trevor Bauer, and Shogo Akiyama. Oh, and Wade Miley. All this put together on one team for David Bell to do nothing with it. Of course, he made the playoffs the 1 year where you only had to play 60 games and finished one game above 500, where he, by the way, didn't score any runs in the playoffs. Man, it's crazy. Because that was a heck of a year. That was a heck of a team that they put together for this man. And we're saying he didn't ever have the chance. And what's crazy about it is, and this is what makes it difficult for the organization, is you'd put, what was it, 10 million in Wade Miley. Then I know they put $7 million a year in Shogo. You put that money in these guys, and off the gate, David Bell didn't want to play them. Wade Miley got his chance because of injuries. Shogo Akiyama never got his chance. You brought this guy over from Japan. He felt like a pure hitter. He wasn't a power guy, but he thought he could make some moves on the base pads. He could just be a good contact hitter. Never in the history on this team, and they paid this man $7 million a year at the time. Spending money. In the history, it felt like you paid him enough that we'd play. In the history of this team, did he get a chance from David Bell? Every once in a while, he'd play every second day, or he'd play a couple games back to back. Never got a chance to get the ball rolling. In 1 year, I think they played him more. Was the one September where he batted near 300? Never got the chance. That's a David Bell thing. So I look back and I just don't see where the Reds organization did not give this guy a chance. And I look back and say now and think of guys like John Madden, who I think were notorious for being very good, or was notorious, I should say, for being very good at developing and getting the most out of young, talented rosters. He was over there with the Rays doing it for a long time. We know the Rays team without a big budget. There was always a young team. You'd get the most out of them. Went to the Cubs, won a World Series with that group of youngsters. So there is managers out there that get the most out of a young core, which is what the Reds have. Again, the injuries have come up and down, but even without the injuries, there was never the consistency. We had the broadside of the barn. Pitching or batting in April for how many of those seasons with the Reds where David Bell would get this team out from behind? And then they get hot for a month and they get cold for a month. September would come around, they fall apart again, or you see some manager. Again, it's stuff, managerial questions. I feel like he got a little bit calmer over the years with the lineup decisions. But, over the time, it was in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Nobody got the chance to get going when it was hot. We've seen that year in, year out with the Reds. That's not an organization problem. I think there was a lot of reasons to say David Bell had his chance. He had 6 seasons to try to do something. He did nothing. If it was 2 seasons, maybe 6 seasons. And now you have a young core, and you have to figure out. David Bell may have been the guy. We could be wrong. They could hire another guy in this Cincinnati Reds team who would 50 games next season. Or we could hire a guy in Reds, this is young Reds core could win 95. The right guy could come in and make a big difference. And we could have been like, you know what, that was a good move. Again, he could win 50. We'd be like, oh, that wasn't a good idea, I guess. But, end all be all, I don't feel like the Reds make playoffs with David Bell next season regardless. So at that point, you might as well try something different. If it don't work out, at least you tried. We appreciate what David Bell did for this organization. He was always a class guy for this organization. I feel like he was always trying his best to stand up for his players. That's why he had the 6,006 ejections. He was always a guy that played a little bit of fire in that regard, standing up for his guys. You love seeing that. Felt like guys liked playing for him for years. And you got to, again, tip your cap to that guy for that. One last thing, speaking of the David Bell situation, is it just felt like guys were... Maybe it had a lot to do with, again, shifting the lineup and pushing guys on a bunch of different places they're not used to. But the Reds just consistently did not make good decisions on the base pads, and they consistently did not play good in the field under David Bell. Those, without question, are manager things. If you're preaching this silly, or you're not disciplining this silly goofiness, or you're not setting the proper example for this kind of base pad running or this kind of antics on the field, then that's going to happen. It just feels like you don't have control of your team. And meanwhile, with the fielding, again, what are you doing as a manager not focusing on this? It's kind of like the bunting. Again, thing we loved about David Bell when he came into this organization, he wanted to play the small ball. Everybody loved it. I think that's the Reds fans, we was looking for that. Let's get the small ball going. David Bell loved it. Again, what happened, as a manager, hey, he said, wait, this team can't bunt. We're going to work on that. We're working on that right now. So there is things as a manager that you can do to help your team in areas they're struggling. Man, I forget all about that all the time. The small ball thing I enjoyed. I think that I'll always say, that's what the Reds got to play. If you're going to be a team with the payroll they got, they have to be a small ball team. They just can't afford to have 3, 4, 30+ home run hitters on their team. Maybe 1 or 2 would be nice, but they can't afford that. So that's the kind of manager the Reds need. I credit the organization for the David Bell signing. They tried, they looked at that and what he wanted to do, be a little bit more analytical, play some small ball. That stuff's important for a low, small market team. I just think overall it didn't work out. Nonetheless, love the all thoughts. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.